If you've followed Super for the past few years, you've probably witnessed the title of this video repeated many times, especially when a not so good looking episode rolls around. I always find it kind of funny and a bit of a strange assumption to make. If you're at all familiar with the staff on Dragon Ball Z and have taken a look at the staff on Super, you'll see that actually there's a lot of crossover and most of them are in pretty high positions of power. So I want to detail exactly who is still around, what they do, and touch on a couple of guys who sadly aren't still around, and look at where they are now. So let's start with the obvious and touch on the very top of the totem pole. Tadayoshi Yamamuro is Super's character designer and the supervising director of animation. He is responsible for adapting Toriyama's new designs into an animatable format, and also for creating the look of pre-existing characters too. Back on Dragon Ball Z, he was one of the more prolific animation supervisors, and he was so exceptional in fact that he was given character design and supervisory roles for all of the Dragon Ball movies from Broly onwards. I've covered his history in pretty deep detail before, so if you haven't seen my episode of Super Supervisors on him, I'll link that in the description. Hopping down the pole, we have Takeo Ide, one of the two chief animation supervisors on Super. You can find his work on every other episode. He's responsible for correcting the final product to try and bring a degree of consistency to the show. Back on Z, he was primarily a key animator. In fact, he was one of the absolute best when it came to producing top-tier sequences. He supervised 2 episodes throughout Z, but it wasn't until GT that he became a regular supervisor. His style as of GT hasn't really changed that much. It's very masculine, and if you want an easy tell to work out his work, just keep an eye out for those very distinctive ears. Dropping down once again, Naoki Tate is one of the regular animation supervisors on Super and is seemingly considered premium, being given many critical episodes. He was a regular key animator throughout all of Z and GT, animating some pretty fan favourite fights. On Super, he not only supervises his episodes, he's also typically the guy who provides the most animation on them too. His animation in terms of movement has changed quite a bit, it's a lot looser now, but as far as character art goes, it's not all too different. It's just that we rarely got to see him outside of his superior's corrections back in the day. Again, be sure to check out my Super Supervisors episode on him for the full details. Speaking of his superiors, Masahiro Shimanuki is also a regular animation supervisor, carrying on from his role in Dragon Ball Z. He was one of the series' top dogs back in the day, and despite struggling with getting his style back for the first year and a bit of Super, he's made a real return to form, and his current approach is a nice mix between the old and new designs. He's definitely one to watch out for if you're feeling nostalgic. Yuji Hakamada, though certainly not a regular on Super by any means, has done assistant supervision on and off throughout the series. He was a regular supervisor back on Z and GT, and although his presence isn't particularly strong on Super, it's nice to have him around all the same. Before heading on down into key animators, there are also a whole bunch of super supervisors who, while not big names back on Z, have spent the past 20 years working their way up in the industry. Koji Nishizawa, Yoichi Onishi, Seizo Toma, Osamu Ishikawa, and Yoshitaka Yoshima are all supervisors on Super, some of them pretty regular. They all had at least a decent stint on the original series or its movies, and now sit as part of the new generation. While I can't easily do before and after examples with them since they almost always fell under their supervisors' corrections back in the day, just being able to plot the growth of animators' careers like this is definitely one of my favourite parts of covering such a historic series. Onto the key animation side of things, Super's first episode brought about the return of an absolute icon of the franchise. Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, the character designer for the Buu arc of Z and all of GT, provided a short scene towards the end of the episode between Chi-Chi and the Muten Roshi. Unfortunately, Nakatsuru doesn't really stick to one series anymore, and has spent the rest of Super's run darting between other shows. On a more positive note, a name almost everyone knows, Naotoshi Shida, is of course still around. Though only contributing storyboards towards the start of Super, he has since begun to provide his hugely popular animation on some of the more pivotal episodes. Back on Dragon Ball, he was already showing a lot of promise with his action scenes during the various tournaments, but it was towards the end of Z when he escaped Uchiyama's corrections that we began to see his talents truly come to light. His distinctive character art hasn't changed too drastically, though his approach to shading certainly has. Ignoring the character sheets almost entirely, Shida uses pretty unique shapes to define his characters. Animation-wise, his movement has only grown more exaggerated over the years, but the general flow of his work is still pretty clear in his older contributions. Another old pupil of Uchiyama, Taiichiro Ohara, joined Dragon Ball Super during the Future Trunks arc, and has since become a regular with his new supervisor Tsutomu Ono. Funnily enough, Ono also houses another Z veteran, Yoko Izuka. Ohara was one of the strongest action-orientated animators back on Z, perhaps most well known for his fight between 17 and Piccolo. His contributions on Super haven't been quite as strong, but from what I understand from talking to one of his co-workers, he's unfortunately had some health issues. Funnily enough, we recently gained yet another old Uchiyama pupil, Tetsuya Saiki. They've only worked on 6 episodes so far, but it'll be interesting to see if they do stick around. Very quickly, Jin Inaba, who only worked on 4 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, has become one of the most prolific regulars on Super, and he seems to be pretty damn good. Lastly, we've got a few animators who either weren't regulars on Z or aren't regulars on Super, but I wanted to mention them all the same just to hammer home that a lot of these guys are still kicking about. Hisashi Kagawa and Megumi Yamashita both contributed at least once, and Hisashi Mori, who produced an incredible cut on Path to Power, popped up in episode 16 of Super, which was hugely nostalgic in terms of its visuals. Unfortunately, we have lost some old school heroes for one reason or another. Naoki Miyahara, most famously known for Gohan's Super Saiyan 2 transformation, is now a director and heavily based in the CG world. Toshiyuki Kano, who animated Vegeta's Sacrifice, has long since graduated Toei and was the character designer for Garo the animation, and also an animation supervisor on the second Hunter x Hunter movie. Masaki Iwane, the star of Studio Cockpit, has been the face of Pokemon animation for years at this point too. It's true, we have lost a couple of great faces, but we've also gained some wonderful new animators too. Kenji Miyuma, Futoshi Higashide, Shuichiro Manabe, Yuichi Karasawa, and many more are all shining new examples of talent in the Dragon Ball world. When things go bad in Dragon Ball Super, it's not a case of who made this bad, it's not about the lack of old school animators. The question to ask is, why does this look bad? And that answer, as I'm sure many of us know by this point, is almost always time. And that's part of why this video exists. It's a reminder that we do have a great deal of old and new talents on board, but the biggest thing to keep in mind is the time in which these animators are given to deliver. Thankfully, we have a lot more time as of this arc, and it really is showing in the results we're seeing on screen. It's certainly not perfect, and there are many episodes that are up against it, but we're doing a lot better. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this video was at least a little bit insightful. Hopefully it helps put to rest the demands as seen in the title of this video. For more info on Super's production, do feel free to check out my Production Issues Explained video for a pretty detailed overview. Thanks for listening, be sure to rate the video and let me know what you thought, and of course, I will see you next time.